So I just wanted to edit one little line of my session description. So at a conference for, this is a conference for a content management system, I believe. And so they told me, they said, oh yeah, you wanted to change that punctuation. Yeah, so you should clone the repo and then make your edits. I don't know if I'm supposed to be spinning that up or even running that. And then submit us a pull request. And then I assume they're going to do a code check on that. And I don't know, run some automated tests on it before. And then we'll eventually make that punctuation change in my session description. At a conference for a content management system. So this is the session on Twigify Drupal. My name is Forrest Mars. I'm the director of engineering. We're a New York-based Drupal engineering firm. I'm the director of Drupal Solutions. Can people hear me if I just talk like this? Like I don't have to lean over? Great. And Elephant Ventures, we're known for solving hard problems. We own the problems, we own the hard problems, and we provide solutions. We look for partners, not clients, right? So it's not, oh, that's your problem and we're providing what you asked us for. It's we absolutely own the problem and provide the solution. And we're going to talk today about some problems in Drupal itself that we decided to take some ownership of and try to provide a solution and release it back to the community. And today, what we're going to look at the Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, the changes in the theming system, and specifically the use of the Twig engine. And we're going to look at how that, most specifically, how the change from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 using Twig for theming affects your development, your websites, and your company assets. We're going to probably look at migration path if people don't run away screaming. We're going to look at a solution for upgrading your sites, whether it's from Drupal 6 or Drupal 7 or Drupal 6 to Drupal 8. And we're going to also look at strategies around there for how do you reduce that kind of friction and pain in a session that is called Twigify Drupal. Oops, wrong button. There we go. And in this session, we're going to explore the notion that all templating languages eventually become Turing complete. And this is a bit of a play on Zawinski's law, which is that all programs expand in scope and the ability of what they can do until eventually they can read mail. So it doesn't matter what your program is, no matter what you originally set out to do, if you release it, eventually it will be able to read mail. There's also a variation of this called the furry goat law, which is that all programs will eventually expand in scope until they can read RSS feeds. And then I think there's even a variation called Google's law, and that's all programs that can read RSS feeds will simply be eliminated, especially if they're widely used. So, but if this then is a general problem with scope expansion in general, well, let's talk about specifically the specifics of this problem. The specifics of this problem are that if you, in fact, allow anything to be done in the template layer, right? If you provide that kind of power, what's going to happen? Like if you release Drupal 7 with the ability to do anything in the theming layer, what's going to happen? Okay. But why is Drupal specifically getting Twiggy? What is the problem? So if you have a powerful theme layer and you have all these functions in that you can basically access anything programmatically in the theme layer, and then we know people will do that, what specifically are the problems with the Drupal theming system? Anyone? Okay, first of all, I mean, I think we're all aware, Drupal does not eschew obfuscation, right? It does not do that. It's very unclear where things are handled. If you're troubleshooting a theme or you're trying to expand on a theme or edit it, where is this handled? Is it in a process, pre-process? Is it, you know, which theming hook is it in? Is it a function? Is it a template? How many of here have used or regularly used Devel Themer? So I would love to see more hands on that because that actually provides a decent kind of solution to that problem. But you know, that's not the only problem in Drupal, right? It's very, very inconsistent where you should do things, right? Do you put something? Do you want to put it? Do you need to put it in the markup, right? Do you put it in a theme wrapper, or do you put it in a render array? Who knows in every case? Who here, when you're theming, knows absolutely in every single case? Should I put this in the markup? Should I put this in a render array? should I put this in a theme wrapper? Who knows that? It's extremely inconsistent. There actually is no real answer to that. And of course, it's very, very insecure to have PHP in your temp layer. Now, there's a bit of an unspeakable truth here, is that WordPress and Tumblr have been using tag-based templating and kind of neater systems for quite a while, but I think that may be probably the only unspeakable truth we'll touch in that direction. But PHP in your template allows you to do wonderful things like this. Who here is familiar with this particular XKCD cartoon? So we have, for those of you that can read it, she's calling, she gets a call, she says, "Hi, this is your son's school. We're having some computer trouble." She says, "Oh dear, did Robert break something?" And I say, "Well, in a way, but did you really name your son Robert backtick parentheses, semicolon, drop table students, semicolon?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, little Bobby Tables we call him." "Well, we've lost this year's student records. I hope you're happy." And she says, "Well, and I hope you've learned to sanitize your database inputs." So this is all very funny, right? And there is a particular style of theming, if we can call it a style, where you do anything in the theme layer. Who here has inherited or worked on let's put it this way, who hasn't inherited or worked on a site where you get to the theme layer and you're like, what are they doing? They're doing this in the theme layer? I mean, that's just crazy, and it's basically little Bobby Tables theming. You take an entire PHP application and then stuff it into a node and ship it off to the client. I mean, and so we inherit this, and we have to. But the problem is it's not just a funny cartoon. This year, a Drupal core maintainer managed to do this. This is what this example is. This is not an abstract example. Managed to drop the node table out of their database, and it's gone, right? So if a Drupal core maintainer can accidentally destroy their database, what hope is there for the rest of it, right? So to kind of provide a solution to that, Drupal is moving on to a much saner system that was originally proposed by CHX just over a year ago. Just 14 months ago, in March of 2012, he suggested, hey, there's this Twig template language and a theme engine. We should probably consider that in Drupal. So it was originally created by Armin Ronecker for his Jinja framework in Python, and it has a language that's similar to Django or maybe even Ruby. But it was shipped with a specific blogging platform, and it wasn't really maintained at all. So Fabian Potencia, the creator of the Symfony project, just shot him a note and said, hey, what are you doing with this? And Armin threw it over to him, and Fabian built it up, and it's now used in Drupal, but it can be used outside Drupal. It's closely aligned with the Symfony framework, but it will never be coupled with the Symfony framework. There'll never be a dependency there, but it works really, really well with Symfony. And just to note that it's released under a BSD license, not MIT or GPL. So that's sort of what Twig is. But let's look at what it can really do. So some of the features that Twig has, it's got a tag-based syntax. So it's what other frameworks use tag-based syntaxes? So we got maybe AngularJS. I think Meteor does. It's cleaner in that it creates very human-readable templates. Like they're very, very easy to read, as we'll see. It's not this mess. If you've ever seen the output of PHP template with the horrible non-white space markup, and it's just all like just giant ball of garbage that you have to kind of parse through. It's super, super fast. Like all your actual Twig templates are compiled down to optimized PHP and then stored where? Like where does that go? So that's stored directly in memory, right? So it's right there as optimized PHP, ready to be run or then compiled down to your machine-specific bytecode. Now there's a setting, and I don't have it on a slide. You can save those directly too, because then the question is, well, how do you even get at this, right? Like, I want to see this PHP that this is compiling down to. So there's a setting, I don't have it on a slide, that you can set in Drupal core. I think you can put it right in the settings PHP file, and instead you can save that off to disk, and it'll write the optimized PHP to disk. I find that faster, more performant data structures actually lead to faster development cycles, and I think there's probably some comp sci law there that alludes to that. So I think it's like a catalytic effect. So you implement a cleaner pattern that has efficiencies in other directions. Did I just say? Thought so. Just checking. So it's also extremely extensible. So instead of having this system of all these cumbersome giant overrides, you're actually cleanly extending in an object-oriented way. It has template inheritance, so you can define layout in one template and then populate your blocks in another. It's much more. Not only is it much more elegant than an override system, it's a really good match for the new Scotch blocks and layout system. It's got command macros, which are little pieces of template code, which you then can store off in other templates and then reuse them. And it seems to me that's a really great idea. It seems like someone is probably very quickly going to put together a Twig utilities module, which is just a bunch of really useful macros that didn't make it into core, and release that out. And then you can invoke them from any of your other templates. Because it's object-oriented, you can do things like parent context references, for in and out variables, so you can access a parent context reference, whether you're inside or outside of a loop. It's got really great IDE integration. It's got really great debugging. It's a tested and mature framework, so it's not just like a brand new thing. It's actually, it's been maturing for 3 years now. It's integrated in most any IDE you want, from PHP Storm to NetBeans to pretty much most of them. So you have that nice syntax highlighting that people like, and it also has a built-in support for ESI, or edge side includes, which some of you may know, is kind of horrendous to try to get to work with PHP template, but edge side includes, for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a way of separating out those portions of your page that you can cache with those uncacheable parts. So you push through the cache components, and then you just replace those elements on the page which can't be cached. And this is becoming increasingly more important as we move to single page apps and asynchronous calls to be able to have. And at this point, right, you're not even talking about a page refresh, right? The cached portion of your page is what? The page itself. And then those elements inside of the page, which are uncacheable, those become your asynchronous calls inside your single page app. So for all of these features in Twig add up to an architectural approach and a workflow which gives you some high level advantages. So it's extensible in that you extend, you don't override. You can write your own filters and tags. So you're extending it, writing your own filters and tags. You can create your own DSL or domain-specific languages, which gives a really nice kind of pairing to the RESTful constraint of the uniform interface, which is a really important pattern which Drupal implements, not just in Drupal 8 as being a REST server, but in general, of giving, we won't go into REST, but the idea of a uniform interface is you sacrifice local efficiencies in matching your DSL, your domain-specific language, to the problem space itself, in return for which you get these, you leverage efficiencies in social coding and productivity. So in other words, if we're all writing our own individual apps, the most efficient way to do them is to write them very specifically for our specific problem domains, right? But then when we try to collaborate, our data structures are all very idiosyncratic. So the principle of the uniform interface gives you something to shoot for. So it's a shared data structure, or a shared pattern, which is less efficient for the specific domains that you may be working on. But in general, you get these giant gains in overall productivity by sacrificing some local efficiency. But now, using a system like Twig, you can get some of that back by creating much more specific structures inside of those uniform interfaces. Anyway, so there's a lot of powerful features that Twig has, including a template inheritance, macros, internationalization right in the template. I mean, where do you need to be doing internationalization? In your business logic or in your display logic, right? It should be in the view. What else do we have here? The efficient template loading, it's more object-oriented. It demuxes the front and the back. So what this means is it has an extreme, it decouples your front-end development from your back-end development, which is a great driver for the efficiency of your development process. In that your designers, the whole chain from your creative to your designers to your front-end development is no longer shackled to these back and forth iterations with the back end as you try to converge on this targeted releasable product, right? At this point, because they're decoupled, you can actually just have a template with the variables in it and hand that over to your back-end development team to implement. You don't have to, I mean, in theory, you're not talking to them again. This is really, really, really great for business workflows. And as we covered, it's got support for ESI too. So we've so we're going to be moving to Twig. And the reasons that we're moving to Twig is because in Drupal 7, a lot of the patterns that we introduced, and they're built on Drupal's legacy, Drupal's history, are not terribly fun to work with. They lead to situations like Bobby tables theming, and it's this, kind of a complicated mess that, one of the points on the slide that I don't think I called out was that all of those problems, even if you solve all of those problems, front-end developers shouldn't be having to deal with that anyway. Like, why do we insist on front-end developers having to learn all of these complicated programmatic approaches? They wow. Okay, well, I'll clap for that. Okay, I mean that's and so now with Twig in core, and it's amazing that it went in just a year flat, because this is a really complicated lift, right? It starts out, it was, the entire thing was done in a sandbox, like many projects, like whiskey starts out in a sandbox, Scotch starts out in a sandbox, but eventually they have to be merged back in the main line. But the template layer is so deeply baked into Drupal that you can't, there was no way to start introducing Twig. Like, it was all or nothing. It had to be, the entire thing had to be block and tackled in a giant mega patch, because, well, for one thing, you can't have two theming engines, right? Like, the module system, it's one or nothing. Like, on the theming side, you can specify which theme engine you run. And so I'm pretty sure pretty much everyone who's probably used an alternate theme engine, a PHP template in Drupal, right? I mean, that's what it supports. No, of course not. Of course not. Everybody uses the one theme, but you can support a second theming engine running alongside. And when we get to the demo in a couple minutes, we'll show you. We'll do just that. So the Drupal patterns that you'll no longer be able to use, render arrays are being euthanized. You'll no longer have to use those, and probably half of you probably didn't use them anyway if you worked on some of the projects I've worked on. I mean, this was a great and powerful pattern that people didn't adopt. Why? Because there was the cognitive friction of unlearning what you had learned before and then learning this new pattern. Theme functions are going totally away. The way we handle Drupal add.js is going away. We use aesthetic and some ability to lazy load the JS just based on attaching it to the specific context or the page that it's needed in. And then string concatenation is going away. We have this, like, I don't understand why we're doing something in the first place. Like, we concatenate all these strings and then we print them. Like, why aren't we just using, like, echoes multiple params? That's probably a question we want to answer today. But all of these various patterns, right, are going away. All these things that you learned, these ways that you learned a theme, they're going away, and we're going to get markup in core. Now, is there anyone, I saw someone about to clap, right? Like, is there anyone that's like, no, I need my markup in core. Please don't take it away from me. So, but perhaps with all of this, with all of the entire approach to the way that you theme Drupal going away, it's probably much easier to talk about what's left, like what's not going away. So that's a very empty slide. So the preprocess functions, if you absolutely need to alter something in the theme layer, you can do it in a preprocess function. at least until Drupal 9, when we're actually going to kill that, because that's just in there still because we weren't able to take it out. It's not like we didn't want to. I mean, none of this stuff should be happening in your theme layer. Your back end should be handing off data that's complete and ready for the theming layer, and the theming layer should not have to be altering that in any way that touches on the business logic. You should have a clean separation of business and display logic. So that's like the only pattern you'll be able to use. Now, the good news is that the Twig syntax that you will have to learn to theme in Drupal 8 is very elegant, and it's very, very simple. You've got tags, aka delineators or delimiters, and there's just 3 of them. There is they were originally in Fabian's original release. I think they were referred to as var. Print was variable. Command was actually called tag, and then comment was comment. I think now they're being referred to more as a print tag, a command tag, and then comments, where print simply prints the result of a valid expression onto the page. Command is your control structures, your if loops and your for loops and nested loops for iterating over things, and then comments are, well, just comments. So the variable can directly reference an object or an array. So we eliminate that whole thing in Drupal, like, should this be an object or is this an array? Like, how is it supposed to be handled? How is it being handled? The variable directly references that because the implementation is masked. There's a generic expression parser which allows you to set and define complex expressions wherever the expression is allowed. So, one of the expressions can be a filter. And you can also pass it a function with multiple arguments. And the command executes the control structures. And if you extend a Twig template, it's going to extend all of the control structures in the template that you extended. They'll all be available in the child template from the originally called. That's inside of the originally called tag. So for an example of a print, this is printing welcome in the language, the current language that's set for the browser or the site. That's all there is to it, right? A command, a loop can be if something, tag something, end if. Like, this is a very simple loop structure, and the reason that we're showing these examples is because it is simple and elegant, and then we'll kind of like look at what we replaced and kind of contrast them. But the filters are just bound to the function on the back end, which are also very easy for you to define. And so it's not like you can't go in there and get in, write functional code on the back end to work with your theme. It's that your theme is no longer dependent on that. You don't have to do it in there, and you're not supposed to do it in the theme, but you can still go. And if you wanted to write, say, if the translate function, filter, as simple as this, because you're just extending the Twig base class, and you're giving a T function, and then you return the Drupal value for that. You reference a function, and it's bound to your filter. It binds right up there, print T. And so you can do that with anything. You can do it with JSON encode, or if you want raw output, or whatever filter you need, whatever custom filter you need. You can do capitalization, as a filter. Anything can be a filter. You just define like that. So we've moved from this, an example of a code block from Drupal 7 to this. So this is what we themers had to work with before, and this is what you'll be doing in Drupal 8. It's much cleaner. It's much neater. It eliminates all of the problems which we touched on and which you probably fought with, or the themers you work with have fought with on a regular basis and pulled out their hair. So if it's so, if this is so amazing, right? If it's so simplistic or simple and it's so elegant, what's the problem? So who's looking forward to, first of all, unlearning everything you've learned for theming in Drupal previous to this, learning a brand new system of theming, mastering it, and rewriting all of your old themes, every site, every asset in the new system. Who's? I'm not hearing a lot of applause. So the problem is You know, and I don't know who here is familiar with this quote. It's a variation on some people, when faced with an unruly theme layer, say, I know, I'll just use Twig for this. Now you have two problems. This is a famous expression, comp sci, that was originally referred to like using regular expressions for everything. And, you know, and, oh, I know, I'll just use. But now you have two problems. So what are, you know, the two problems? Well, the first problem is the learning curve, right? The first problem is you have to unlearn everything that you've done. Your entire team has to forget all that and learn a new system. You have to adapt that into your workflow, into your development process, and after you have, like, everyone knows it, you still have a second problem. Everything you ever did, all of your sites, all of your assets, all of your themes are still back on the old system, and none of that is useful. You are faced with the pain of upgrading. And this is the harder problem, right? Because, you know, migration is not an easy problem to solve, or we wouldn't have given up on migration tools that we were trying to build in early iterations of Drupal, or upgrade tools. And even after we kind of like changed the paradigm from upgrade to migration, you know, the tools still simply are not there yet. And this is going to be a fairly large upgrade from 7 to 8, or those of you that are skipping 7 and going from 6 directly to 8. It's still, there's a lot, all the work you've done needs to be completely rewritten. I mean, who's had the experience of a site where someone took, who here has never worked on a site where someone took more than 100 hours to work on a theme? Like, that's everyone in the room, right? And that's just like one site. That's just one thing you're building. So remember, everything out there that's written in Drupal is going to have to be rewritten. And so this is the hard problem. And as I mentioned at Elephant Ventures, the company I'm with, like, we like hard problems, and we like to solve them, and we like to own the solution. So we got to thinking on this, and we're like, well, you know, what can we do here? Like, how can we build a tool, or how can we like find something we can build on to reduce this pain, to reduce the effort required, something that works in your workflow, you know, whether you're a single developer, or you have a small shop, or you're a large Drupal agency, or you're a giant enterprise that has, you know, hundreds of Drupal sites deployed, because that's going to be a huge complex problem of migrating all that in a systematic way, right? I mean, you can't just like throw developer hours at this. I mean, if you just like, you know, if everyone here has worked on a site where, you know, where your theming time, is hundreds of hours just for, you know, a site, you start multiplying that out times all the Drupal sites on the web, and it's, you know, it's coming up to powering like 10% of all the CMS-driven sites on the web. This is a lot of hours. This is a lot of cost, and this is a large burden that we thought could be simplified by building a tool that automatically converts themes from PHP template to Twig. And it's called Twigify, for those of you who don't know, and it's available on, you can find it in Twigify module on Drupal.org, and it's got a roadmap which we'll get to, and it's demo time. Oh. Anyone can sing the peanut butter jelly song while I'm kind of queuing up the demo here, if you like. So what I have for this demo is I've got, just to kind of explain what you're going to be seeing here, is I have a Drupal 7 site that's running here, and then alongside it I have a Drupal 8 site, which hopefully we'll refresh that there. And over here I have and they're both running inside of a Vagrant instance, inside of a virtual machine. I have a Drupal 7 site and Drupal 8 site running side by side. And here I'm just SSH'd into my Drupal 8 instance. And here I am SSH'd into my, no, maybe not. Hold on one second here. Experience. So now there I'm SSH'd into my D7 instance. So, and there's the front view, and there's Drupal Camp Boston. And it's actually very, very hard to do this over on the far screen there. There we go. So if I go back to my D7 instance, if I run something like drush pml, and then I grep for the Twigify module, which I've already installed, and I'm going to actually, on the Drupal 8 instance, I'm going to make sure that we're running on the Bartik theme, which is running in the PHP template. There it is. Let's make sure we'll set it as the default. And so now back in my Vagrant instance. So now I'm on a Drupal 7 site. This could be like any Drupal 7 site you have. And in mine, I just have it running inside of a Vagrant box. And I'm connecting to it through the shell. And I just ran my drush command, and I saw that I've already downloaded and enabled the Twigify module. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the Twigify module, and it's going to scan my Drupal 7 site. It's going to look for my current theme, and then it's going to ask me some questions about what I want to do with the theme, and then it's going to, I just said again. I went to a session in San Francisco where they actually had an Angular app that shocked them every time they said and the audience tweeted a hashtag. It was, and they managed to get this box through TSA too, that like was like the USB zapper. It was this handmade thing that had like massive electrical output. You could actually turn it up really high so that it hurts. So TSA, not a problem. Here, go on, have fun at your conference, guys. So not to get too far sidetracked. So what I'm going to do then is I'm simply going to run drush Twigify as a drush command extension, and there is, one problem with this module when you use it is that you're probably going to have to stock up on your Y key because you're going to wear it out, because it's pretty much like this takes all that pain and complexity that we talked about and reduces it to stepping you through like using your Y key. But it's okay because you can probably use your dollar key because that's not going to be used in theming anymore. So we'll run that. And so, oh, lovely. Okay, let's see if we can get this on screen for everybody. There we go. There we go. So to begin with, let's make sure you have everything you need. You need to know the name of your theme. That's like, what do you want to call your new theme? The source theme to convert from that's installed in this Drupal instance. So you just want to make sure that the source theme that you want to convert from is installed on Drupal 7. And then you want to know the path that you want to save that new theme to. Like, where do you want Twigify to put that when you're done? So I have both of them running inside of my Vagrant box, so I can just tell it, take this Drupal 7 theme, convert it, and then put it over here in this other directory where I'm running Drupal 8 from. So since I have all the information, I start wearing out my Y key. And so Twigify scans your Drupal 7 installation, and it says, hey, I found Bartik and Garland, 7 and Stark. There's an EV Twig theme in there in Drupal 7. Which one do you want to Twigify? So I'm going to say, well, let's do Bartik, everybody's favorite. And so now we want to call our new theme something. Okay, so we're going to call it Twigify Bartik. We'll keep hammering on the Y key. And so we need to create a new directory. So Twigify will give you some great information. It can, again, scan, and it can say, here's, in Drupal 8, there's where your themes go. There's a current working directory. I'm going to try to copy and paste at a weird angle here. So I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to change D7 to the D8 installation that I have running. And should I put my theme there? No, because as it helpfully points out, in Drupal 8, all themes go in the site root themes. So unfortunately, this breaks a long-standing pattern in Drupal that you could rely on, that you knew as a developer. You never put modules in the modules directory, and you never put themes in the themes directory. Why would you do that, ever? So in Drupal 8, themes go into site root themes, modules, site root modules. Things are starting to make sense again. So we're going to put it in the site root /themes. So now it's going to write out the theme info file. It's a little, probably should change some of the wording in this because it's not an info file, right? It's not using that kind of pseudo.php.info format anymore. It's going to be a YAML file. So it's actually going to create a theme info YAML file. And then removing the old file, it just says, hey, do you want to remove the old one? This is not going to take it off your old site, right? This is just when it copies everything over. You don't need the old info file anymore. So it's just going to make sure it does not corrupt it's in your new one. So again, on the Y key. And so now it scans, and it very, very quickly finds every template that's in your theme. The roadmap eventually, well, not even eventually, we're just going to, we should be able to scan for modules too, or pass it a custom module. So as module developers, you can say, hey, I really don't feel like doing all this by hand. Like, why don't I just like convert any of the templates inside of my module to, and basically any theming hooks to Twig. So, do you want to Twigify all of them? So right now it's like all or nothing, and just like this. So what's happening behind the scenes here is there's actually a Lexer that's running over your theming functions, and it's actually creating what's referred to as a concrete syntax tree, which is the actual kind of the implementation of the abstract syntax behind it, and it's basically tokenizing it. Then it's going to go over those tokens, and it's going to convert all the ones it knows about. So if you've adhered closely to Drupal coding standards and Drupal theming standards, it's going to be able to recognize everything in your theme, lexically as a token, which it knows how to convert to Twig. Now, if you've deviated a bit, you've gone off in the wilds, or you've done some crazy Bobby Tables theming, right? It's going to be like, I don't know what this is, right? So in that case, what it's going to do is we wrap that inside of a comment, and we copy that over. And we say, hey, we don't know what you're doing here, right? But here, you're going to have to like figure this out later. And this is actually part of our overall roadmap, which if you look on DO, you'll see there's a Twigify module and a Twigifier module. There's like two namespaces, and one is intended to provide an overall audit tool that you can plug into any site using. It uses checklist API, and it does an audit of your whole site and says, well, here's what you need to do to get to have your theme on your site running in Drupal 8. Eventually, this is going to be part of a full-on migration tool for automatically migrating an entire site, automatically, not just the theme layer, but the whole thing to Drupal 8. Right now we're focused on the theme layer, so the one part on the Twigify will, implements checklist API, does an audit on the site, it tells you where you need to be, and then the Twigifier portion like plugs in, and it runs everything that can be automated. And then at the end, you're left with all this stuff it doesn't know what to do with, and it wraps that in a comment, and then that becomes part of the audit, and it says this is what you have left. So now you can start getting a sense of what you need to do a conversion, whether it's multi or many. So, having said all that, now it found the functions, and it found some theme overrides, and so let's process them too. Boom, just like that. So now what just happened there is it just created from your old theme. We use Bartik as an example. A Drupal 8 theme running in Twig. It copied over to our Drupal 8 directory. So now if I go back to my site here, and I'm in Drupal 8, yes I am. So if I refresh this page, we should see a new, but it is a demo. We should see a theme here that is called Twigify Bartik. And there it is. So I think what we want to do here is probably something like this. But before we do that, we're going to do what every good developer knows to do. What are we gonna do here? The theme registry. And then we'll be good to go. I'm sorry, you probably won't wear out all those other keys as fast as the Y key. And so now we should, in theory, be able to do this. And while we're doing that, I think I'm going to jump over here, and I am going to find our YAML file. And you'll see down here that in our new Twig YAML file, we have, so, and by the way, so, well, just so it's just specifying the engine Twig. So if we looked at our old info file, obviously, it's running a PHP template, and I'm sure everyone here is probably aware that now, a theme can run on an engine that's also installed on the site. You can have the engines, multiple engines installed, and the theme layer can take advantage of those, but obviously the module layer can't. So let's go back and just see that now Twigified Bartik, it was automatically converted, and problem solved. The theme that was automatically converted by this module in just like a minute is now set to the default theme. And let's go ahead and see what it looks like. See if it looks like even close. See if it even looks even close to like Bartik, like running natively on the PHP template engine. That's it. So this is the problem that we kind of took on, and as part of a larger strategy for providing like migration solutions and migration paths in Drupal. And I won't go into any kind of digressions about how, like, I think this is a really kind of interesting, if not important, model for how vertically aligned businesses and open source projects can find new modes of collaboration and exchange, as opposed to companies being like, oh, we get open source. You guys take a couple hours and go through the issue queue and do some stuff, and we don't need to know about it. That's one model. I'm not sure that works so well. But this is a model of actually, applying that kind of, the business-driven intelligence to solve hard problems and releasing it back to the open source community so that you guys can get back to doing what you do best and what you want to do. And you don't have to be like rewriting all this stuff, just to get back to where you started in the first place. So the roadmap for Twigify includes automated module conversion, so it's not doing themes anymore, but it's going to go into the modules and convert all the theming hooks there. An API for theme maintainers to contribute rule set extensions to support base themes. Because remember, as I said, when we get to things that that Twigify doesn't recognize, you've kind of gone off the rails, and whether it's extreme Bobby tables theming or you've just got some customizations in there, those are going to create additional points of friction. And so we want to provide an API that you can provide with your theme, an exception rule set that then Twig processes, and it iterates over that. And when it comes to something it doesn't recognize, it goes back and says, "Oh wait, do I have a rule for this?" And it's like, great. Now I now understand what that token is to. I can convert that, and this would be really useful for base themes. So now Zen, Omega, Mothership, all of them can simply provide an exception rule set for the base theme, and all of the derivative themes that are running on those base themes can be automatically converted using the Twigifier. Currently, it definitely trips over a lot of the stuff that goes on in base themes because they're extremely customized. And then we finally have to clean up an admin view of the audit results with a conversion to do management. So when you get all done, then you basically you run the audit. It tells you where your site is. You run the automated tool. It converts everything it can do automatically, and then the audit tool goes back and it says, well, here's what's left. So at least now you have some sense of what you have to do, like whether you have one site or you're an agency and you're supporting and maintaining or working with many channel partners, or whether you're an enterprise, you've got like deployments of hundreds of sites. Now you can like at least start putting a number on it and say, okay, I've got so many sites, here's how many exceptions we found in each site. You total them up, you put some kind of hours on there. At least you have some idea of managing the problem to create a migration readiness checklist. And remember, you're going to have process changing in your development. You're going to have developer retraining to train people on how to use Twig. Because we can give you the 80% for free, and then help you get that other 20%. We're subverting the Pareto principle, to do a theme assessment and actually start planning in a coherent way your strategies for migration to relieve the cognitive burden on your team and the overall cost to your company. Now, if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, please come up and see me after the session and we'll talk. And once again, thanks very much for coming. I'm Forrest Mars, the Director of Drupal Solutions for Elephant Ventures.